it's just about helping people. Let's put it this way. When you sell, if you're a real salesperson, just helps the prospect. They're not, they are, they need to help the prospect to help themselves with your product or service. If I'm selling cars, I'm not selling cars, I'm helping you purchase a vehicle. It's different to let me sell you. That gives, it's just helping. So if you want to sell more, you can also just help more. And you think, yes, but help. If I help, where's the money in it? Help doesn't mean without return. But when you help, there will be the return.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Mindshift podcast. It's been a hot minute since I last talked to you guys. It's so good to be back. I'm here with another amazing guest. I'm so honored and I'm so privileged to be sitting here with Ezra, the co-founder of Cape Town's favorite music festival and summer party festival, We Love Summer, also the founder of Empower Funding, which we will be talking about. Gal, it's great to see you, my friend, and it's been a while since we last talked. And I mean, how are things going?
Yeah, things are great. Thanks for having me on. I'm honored to be on as well. And last time we spoke was like end of 2019 at one of the festivals. So it's so good to be back and on this platform.
Yeah, I'm so happy, and it's great to have you. Just
Thank you.
Before we dive into things, I wanted you to just give a brief your backstory. Give two to 5 minutes on who is Ezra, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, sure. So quick backstory. I was born in Cape Town, but the accent everybody asks about. So I was born in Cape Town, South Africa, and I lived here until I was about 6. And then we moved to the US. So most of my life was in the US, hence that American accent, but it's not quite American because I grew up in the US and then moved back here 10 years ago. But my native language is Hebrew. My parents are Israeli. So we speak Hebrew at home. So I'm kind of a mix of like Israeli, South African, and American all together. And anyway, I've been back in Cape Town for the last 10 years. If you want, I can get into why I came back and that whole story.
Please.
Okay. So it was interesting. I was 19 years old. And my visa to be in the US was about to run out. And I wasn't going to overstay. So I left. I went to Israel actually to get the visa renewal with my parents. And when we were in Israel, my parents got the visa renewal, but I didn't. And I was like, what the heck? I can't go home. My whole life is in the US, all my friends, everything, my future was there. So we were like, okay, my dad said, you know what, go to Cape Town, because I had Israeli passport and I had South African passport. But even though I grew up in the US that whole time, I didn't have the American passport, but I had the South African. So he said, go to Cape Town, do a visa application from there. You'll get it from there. Or hopefully you will. So I went alone to try. My parents went back to the US. I'm 19 years old, land in Cape Town, basically knew no one, just had my grandma here, luckily, and was just staying with her, and went to do the visa application and it got denied. And I was like, what do I do? Like, I'm stuck, right? If my parents are in the US, they can't come all the way to see me. My friends are all in the US. My entire future, what I was going to do for work, everything was in the US. And I'm in Cape Town in this place that I'm like, tough to make friends, like just knowing basically no one. And had to figure it out. Had to figure out my way and what to do in Cape Town. So I thought I would be here for the first 10 days. Then it became clear, okay, it might be about a month or two until you get to go home. A month or two became 6 months. 6 months became a year. I only went home 3.5 years later.
Crazy. That's unbelievable.
In that, yes. And what I had to do in order to get the visa was they wanted to see that I had a life established in Cape Town, because that's the only way they'll give you a visa. So they know that if you're going to visit a different country, if you're going to visit the US, you'll go back home because you have another home to go back to. You won't be an illegal alien in the US. So in that 3.5 year time, I established a life here and built the festivals, the businesses, and all that we're going to speak about. That was built in that time. An entire life got built within about a year or two. And then it was a while of establishing it to really show that it's for real. Then I was able to go home, just visited very quickly, came back here, and I've been going back and forth, but predominantly here ever since. And in that time, which is what we'll talk about, the businesses and all that stuff expanded.
Yeah. And obviously in that time where, you know, you had to establish your life in South Africa, you built these businesses, so you couldn't really now sort of uproot and just leave again.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
But I wanted to ask a quick question, Gal, before we do dive into We Love Summer and all the festivals, because I know that that's sort of the beginning and sort of the big successful. Obviously, you're still building Empower Funding, and that's still happening as we speak. But that's sort of your big successful business that you have built thus far. Am I correct me if I am wrong in that, if there is some other secret giant out there? But I wanted to ask, just in the beginning of things, I mean, as a child, were you entrepreneurial? Were there any other small businesses that you tried your hand at before We Love Summer that you took learnings from and applied it there? Was there any other small business before?
Right. So first of all, yeah, I was definitely entrepreneurial being younger, like in school, or definitely in high school. My parents and I would travel to Israel, for example, I'd bring back chocolates and cereals and all kinds of things like that. And I lived in a boarding school, and I would sell it. And I just had this thing of I'd buy it and I'd sell it. Like, it's so obvious. That's an easy way to make money. So I had that knack, but it was always very clear to me that I would be an entrepreneur. I went to a great high school called the Delphian School. It's an amazing boarding school in Oregon. And while there, it's known that they prepped the kids to go to the best universities in the world. Okay. And while I was there, it was always clear to me, I'm not going to university. I'm going to be an entrepreneur. And at the beginning, it was weird for them. But by the end, the headmistress there, she said, usually we push kids to go, but with Gal, we know he's going to be okay. So they were really okay with me. They knew I would become, this is what I would do. So I always had that. And then when I got to Cape Town, I did a few different things that were more passions. So I loved acting, and I actually made a pretty decent money doing acting. I was on TV shows, films, commercials, things like that, because I always loved being in a camera setting or acting. It was just a passion, really. And then I helped sell, my dad had a software, so I was doing a lot of salesman work with that while I was here, just kind of figuring that out on the side. And I was always doing like little things, but nothing major before the events.
Okay.
And what actually happened was, I knew I could build something, but the event sort of started. And I was actually sure, because I was stuck in Cape Town, I was like, you know what, maybe I should just go to the Israeli army. That was actually something I was thinking to do. I was like, it's going to be a fun experience. I can go for a year, because there was a way I could only go for a short time. Maybe I'll do that. And that was the summer when I had that idea. I was like, okay, after the summer being November through March here in Cape Town, but after that Cape Town summer, so around March, April, I will go to the army. That was what I thought would be a fun adventure, because I was like following my passions and experiences, right? Remember, I'm stuck in Cape Town, unable to go home. So I'm trying to I'll play with things. This is a time to play. I'm like 20, 21. But in that summer is when We Love Summer happened, and it just exploded. And I was like, okay, I'll stay here. Let's ride this wave. And I can tell you how that all expanded. But
yeah, well, I mean, I want to hear. No, exactly. I want to hear, and that's a great segue, and how things just fell into place. And I'm sure that time you spent in Cape Town before We Love Summer will happen, it was so necessary for you to develop certain skills, because the acting is definitely selling yourself, as you talk about a lot in your content as well.
Mm-hmm.
as well as obviously doing sales with your dad as well.
Yeah.
But tell the origin story. I've heard this from you before, but I want to get
Mm-hmm.
it in the podcast because I think it's an amazing
Yeah.
story of how We Love Summer started, and we can go on and talk more about the business from there.
Right. Yeah, totally. I mean, look, it happened as authentically as could possibly be. I always liked bringing people together. So back when I was 18, 19, still in the US, everybody would message me as like, what are we doing this weekend? And I would get all 20, 30 friends. This is what we're doing this
You
weekend.
were
I would
that
always
guy.
bring people. I was that guy. This is the plan, right? I'd bring people together. So when I got here, remember, I knew basically no one. And the people that I did meet, I was like, I don't know, I'm not connecting with them. So it took me a while to find the gems in the city that later became good friends. But as I went, I met people. I was always about communicating a lot. I'm naturally interested in people and naturally like to chat, naturally outgoing. So I would just chat to people. And as I went, I met lots of quantity of people, quantity, and just found people and started naturally bringing them together. And when I say bring together, I mean in the most simple ways, like 15 friends. I was living with my grandma around my grandma's pool. Okay, that's how it started. So 15, 20 people would come. And I met this guy who was actually, he was here in town as an international model, Israeli guy. He heard me say my name, Gal, which was Israeli. He came up to me and said, did I just hear you say, I yelled it to someone, my name's Gal. Somewhere I was out chatting and I said it. And he said, did I hear you say your name is Gal? Yeah, he's like, oh, I'm Israeli. I'm in town. I'm modeling here just while I'm here. We got to chatting and turns out he was staying at this model house. So all the international models get these beautiful houses together, which makes the price go down. And that's where they live during the summer. And I said, oh, wow. So, he had a pool there and we started chatting and saying, why don't we do little get togethers at your house? I know by that time I knew enough people and there was the people that are already staying at his house. And we said, let's all bring them all together and we will make this happen, like these little get togethers. So we started doing it again, small, 30 people. Okay. I'll show you some of the photos, like tiny. And I then saw that these other two guys were doing events as well. They were doing similar house parties, but to a different crowd. And they were actually calling it We Love Summer. But it was very casually, like it was casually, that was the name. It wasn't the brand that you know of today.
Yes.
It was just kind of a name they were using. And I messaged the guy and I said, listen, you do little house parties. So do we. Let's bring our crowds together and do a big one. So, okay. So we started and about 100 people came. Now for us, 100 people was like, wow, like that was like 10,000 people. And 100 people came after we really promoted it. And there was all kinds of issues along the way. And all kinds of issues to make this 100-person house party happen. But we ended up breaking even and we all split 20 Rand, literally. We got 20 Rand each, which is like $2 at the time. And that's what we got. And we were like, okay, well, we broke even and we made it. So we're this group of people, all equal partners. We said, you know what, we already consider ourselves to have a partnership, even though we only did a small little thing. And we said, okay, if we go, that was in February. That was it for that summer. Okay. Now we were going into the winter and we said by November, the start of summer, if we really, really market and we sell tickets, but we have to really market, 300 people will come to our next event, but we have to really market it. So we all got together and that's when we developed the logo and the name and the concept and everything. We all put our heads together and put our own flavor into it. And We Love Summer was born as what it is today. And we said, we put out this logo and we promoted this event, hoping 300 people would come. On the day after we really marketed, 900 people came. And we were like, oh my gosh. And then it was the best. I mean, this was the craziest party, amazing. It was awesome. And the police came and shut it down at 6 p.m. It was supposed to go till 10 p.m. Police shut it down. And I was devastated. I thought that all the hard work over that whole winter was ruined because people were there and now it got shut down and they're so disappointed and our brand is destroyed. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, what are we going to do? I remember just feeling like embarrassed, you know? And the next morning I looked on Facebook, because we did the events on Facebook at the time, and people were posting, the police won't stop us. You know, like they loved it. They were hyped about it, and they didn't mind. They were like, it was just so good. What you guys put forth was so unique and so fun and so good. They loved it. 3 weeks later, the next event was 1,600 people. The one after that was, I think, a month later or 5 weeks later, it was 1,900 people. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to the army.
That's like crazy growth. That's like crazy growth for like 3 weeks. I mean, yeah, it's like 200%, but in 3 weeks. But I mean, I'm just thinking, because at that point, right, in November, like, I wonder if did you guys know at that point that you had like a business on your hands, or did you just from that first party you threw in Feb, were you like, okay, let's just throw another party in November and see what happens there because we really enjoyed it? Or did you really know in that winter, like, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this, and we're gonna, you know, properly do this business?
I had the feeling of, I'm going to properly do the business on the one hand, but on the other hand, it was like, it's not going to be my main thing. It's going to be something I do. And in fact, the first one that got shut down by police was on a rooftop. So this rooftop venue. So in my mind, I was like, we're going to do 2 events a month on this rooftop for the entire summer. We'll make enough money to cover like a basic monthly salary. So with our other work that we do during the week and whatever, like, we can have a decent like living. By decent, I mean basic. At the time, I'm like 22 at the time or whatever. So I thought like, this is going to be pretty decent. But when that event got shut down by the police, that rooftop was never going to be used again. And so I was like, that's why I was also devastated. I'm like, my entire summer plans and the whole brand that we built was destroyed. So that's why I was like, you know what, like, let's just do another event and see how many people come. So it was really at the beginning a hobby / oh, it's a way to make some money over
like
the
side
summer.
hustle sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So I knew it had potential, but I didn't think that it would be what it became. You know, it was an organic thing.
Yeah. And do you think that helped you in a sense, because then you didn't sort of trip yourself up if you know what I mean? Like, you didn't think, okay, I want to make this massive event company, which obviously it has turned into that in South Africa. And you've even gone international. I mean, if you had maybe started out with those sorts of expectations, maybe you would have sort of shot yourself in the foot, but you just thought, okay, I'm just going to do this on the side, see what happens. You know, we good at this. We've proved we good at this with 100 people. Let's try 300. And then 900 end up coming.
Yeah, exactly. It 100%, it would have tripped us up, which is something that I learned and took with me to other businesses, is how do you have that mentality that we had at the beginning, even when you're trying to build a business? Because at the beginning we were somehow, it's not naive, but we were just, you know, starting. If somebody at the beginning told me, look, these are all the things you're going to have to do and know in order to make this thing happen, I would have never started. It would have been so overwhelming. So it would, I probably wouldn't have started even. So I think that was a big part of it. It was just, we started and, oh, this is the next step. This is the next step. This is the next step.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
And then, I mean, fast forward, you know, to today, obviously, you know, Corona's completely thrown a span in the works, and in that business. And I do want to talk about that towards the end of this segment. But, you know, fast forward a couple of years and you guys have an absolute behemoth on your hands. You have We Love Summer as the main party. Then you had Future Frequency, you had Festival, Kinky Summer, the New Year's Eve party. I mean, how did you guys, I mean, for you, what were the key steps in getting to that sort of scale? Especially, you know, we live in a world now where everything is tech, it's software, it's scaling in those sorts of numbers. I mean, how do you go about, from your guys' experience and how you guys did it, how did you go about scaling that, you know, this events company to the scale it is at currently?
Yeah. So my dad explains what success is. He taught me a lesson, and he said that success, what people define success in so many different ways, but at the end of the day, you're asking, how did we achieve success? And he says that success is the sum of all your validated improvements. So validated meaning you say, well done, you validated, you say this is good. And improvements is anything that improves. So anytime that you say, wow, well done, this is an improvement, this is an improvement, this is an improvement, the sum of that, all of that, when you add that all together, you have success. So you think of it as like, oh, if it's a scale, you say, this is good, this is good, this is good. Wow, well done, amazing, amazing, amazing. This is good, boom, you have success. All of a sudden you've realized, I have success. And success is a decision, right? And it's actually a viewpoint of, I am successful, right? So for us, how we did it really was small, validated improvements just along the way. Wow, we got 100 people. We thought, oh my God, we made it. Wow, this was like major. We really validated ourselves. And then we thought, oh my God, we have this amazing brand. And we thought, wow, if we really market, we can do it. We can do it. 300 people, no problem. We really knew that every little improvement, we were celebrating. And that's honestly simple. It's very simple, because people talk about scaling a business. It's like, scaling a business, it's like a thing that's like, it needs to be for us, really, it was one at a time, every time, saying that's good, that's good, that's good, that's good. And that's how we did it.
Yeah.
Now,
and tons of experimenting, I'm sure, like you guys always did.
For sure, experiment. We always were trying things, but we also saw this was really good. Okay, what's the next step? Whereas I see many people, and this is like one of the lessons I learned that I take into everything I do now, right? When we started We Love Summer, I didn't wake up in the morning and say, today we're starting an events business. Okay. Whereas, for example, with Empower Funding, my finance company, one morning it was like, okay, today we're starting a finance business, right? That's how that started. So on We Love Summer just started like, oh, it just happened. So what did we learn and take from, oh, it just happened, into a business where you're like, today I'm starting? And really what it was saying, okay, you think big, you have a big picture, but you start small. Basic, the most simple, easy first step. And that's what I do with everything. The podcast that we started, my social media platforms, I have real estate investments, like everything that I've done as, okay, let's just start with the first little thing, easy, like as if I'm not even trying to. I just am doing it because I'm playing the game. The first step. And then when it's good, anything good, wow, that's amazing. Another thing, that's amazing. And that's how I build it. That's the way, not a shortcut, but that's the trick to having that naive success, but even when you want it to happen.
Yeah. And I mean, that's amazing. It's an amazing framework you just put out there in terms of those incremental successes along the way to your big vision. And I just wanted to ask now, with building We Love Summer and this events business, what were the biggest challenges in doing that you guys encountered each year, each summer, each party, balancing everything? And were there any sort of tangible failures that you experienced, or a failure story, that micro failure within the business that you learned from and took that into, say, the next summer, for example?
Yeah, for sure. So we had different there were many different situations and crazy fires that I can tell you crazy stories. I mean, there was a time that we had like the threat of these gangsters somehow getting involved in one of our events, and we were scared out of our mind. Or we had a time that it was New Year's Eve, or the New Year's Day, the 31st. Our event was starting at 12 p.m., okay, at noon. And I'm sitting in a meeting with all the Cape Town's municipality, all the government officials, and they're telling me, you're not going to be granted your liquor license. And I'm like, the event starts in 2 hours. It's New Year's. What do you mean? We're not going to be able to sell liquor? Nope, you're not.
So
like
how do you
those
deal?
types of
How do you get yourself out of that mess?
yeah, you end up just communicating. Really, it was just a matter of the universal handling for anything is good communication. So we ended up explaining to them and talking to them and all that. And we knew, but basically what happened is the guy that was supposed to submit our paperwork didn't do the job right, but they knew that we did everything in our power and blah, blah, blah. We ended up finding the right official, and the right official kind of said, look, you basically, he knew we did it right. I mean, they were trying to hang us up on a technicality that the guy, anyway, we spoke to him and figured it out. And literally like an hour and a half before the event, they're like, okay, you can sell liquor. I'm like, oh my, go get it ready. Like it was, so you have those types of situations. And like we have, so those are challenges. Challenges are figuring out on our own. The police shut you down and realizing you need permits for your events. We just didn't know. So that's why I said at the beginning, had I known, like, wow, you have a lot more admin. It's not as glamorous as you think to run a festival. So challenges of learning about accounting and being an admin and permitting and dealing with suppliers and all these things were like, what? We're just kids like trying to do little house parties here, right? And it just grew fast. So we had to learn. And to answer in terms of like little failures, I mean, for example, we at one time tried to do an apparel line, and it was money sort of down the drain. It didn't end up going well because what people loved was the brand, and we tried to get it into doing like a fashiony direction, which we didn't really check that people liked. One of the partners decided that he thinks it looks cool, but nobody ended up really buying it. So we learned, okay, we need to see what the people like, and we need to, we learned, again, you need to give people what they want, not what you think they want. Even if you're the main owner, what you think doesn't really matter. It's what are the people saying they want. And you can figure that out without making the mistake. You can do it before you make the product. You can figure out how to do it. You don't need to do it and then realize, oh, people don't want it. You can do that ahead of time. So we had different things like that.
I mean, that's amazing. It's such a great point. I mean, it's customer first. It's building your business with the customer in mind. And how did you, talking on that note, how did you filter that sort of mentality and that approach, customer obsessed approach, into throwing these parties? Because I mean, you guys, a We Love Summer, anyone who's been to a We Love Summer party, if you haven't, I mean, I don't know where you've been for the past 6 years, but how does that filter in terms of throwing the party? How do you get that feedback from customers and find out what they want in the party? I mean, is it experimentation, season to season, week to week? How does it work?
Yeah, it's there's a lot of aspects to it. So first of all, we know that I can explain a lot about the concept of exchange, okay? And I'm not going to get into the whole lesson right now, but the general idea is that if I give you something, you give me something in return. Okay, that's exchange, right?
Yeah.
If we walk into a store and I buy a chocolate for $1, I expect a chocolate that's worth $1. But if you give me a half-opened chocolate, I'm like, well, I paid you $1 for a new one, not a half-opened one. So let's get fair exchange, right? So fair exchange would be, I give you $1, you give me a chocolate, okay? That doesn't actually work in business. People think they need fair exchange in business, but that doesn't work. What works is the fair exchange, but there has to be an additional wow. That has to happen. If you're just doing fair exchange, your business will slowly die until the better one comes around. If you give exchange with, oh, wow, that was cool, unexpected additional things. If you go into the store and you buy the chocolate for $1, and then the guy also notices that you're with your puppy and he gives the puppy a free treat, that's exchange with a wow. All of a sudden you got your chocolate, but the puppy got a little treat because the guy saw and did something that is basically free or extremely low cost and makes it wow for the experience, for the customer and for their experience. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, completely. No, completely.
So that was our mission, right? Was okay, how do we, the people are coming, the fair exchange would be what everyone else did. You have toilets, you have security, you have a bar, you have a stage, you have music.
People expect that.
That's expected, right? That's the basics. And that's what was up until then. And we came and we said, what is the wow? And I was, each of my partners contributed so much in their own particular way, but this wow factor was something that I, with pleasure, take credit for, because it's something that for me is super vital, and I put it forth. What is the wow? Okay, the wow was always pushed for me, and that was basically, look, what are my pet peeves that if they were handled would be a wow? Okay. And what I did, I'd go to other events and I'd see what I don't. So few things: long lines at bars. We did not want that at the event. Long lines for the toilets. I don't want that at the event, right? Those are the types of touches I'm talking about. We also noticed, especially with the house parties, people would come in pretentious, like they're too cool for school in Cape Town. And we said, what can we do that just kind of gets everybody in the mood of like, we want to be together and have fun, rather than we're cool, you're too, we're in our group and we're cool. And what we found that was the magic was Hawaiian necklaces, the fake, the
Yes,
plastic
yeah, yeah.
necklaces. Everyone that came in the door got a Hawaiian necklace. These were the touches, and you saw somehow people put those on and they just chilled out and they got in the vibe immediately. So it was these little things that made it wow. And then how do you keep a tab on that? So being at the festivals, listening to the people talking, asking them, a lot of times they wouldn't know, let's say, that I'd be involved. So just, how do you like the event? Just listening, feedback afterwards, at the event, seeing where are people going, what music did they like, when was the dance floor full, when wasn't it, how is the layout, what areas got congested, did the bar get too full? If so, at what time? Because, all these little improvements, so that the next time it would be even better. And that's sort of what we always kept our eye on.
Yeah. I mean, it's serious attention to detail, all these moving parts. And I love the fact that you actually, and I mean, I have firsthand experience of this. I mean, you guys and Brett and your other partners are at the event the entire day. You on the ground. You actually, you're not sitting in the boardroom or the office making high level decisions. You guys are in the trenches actually doing, and that's I think that probably the biggest lesson, a big takeaway for myself, especially. I mean,
great,
it's
man.
great.
Yeah.
It's great. I mean, I just two more quick questions on We Love Summer before we move on to Empower Funding.
Sure.
I want to ask, obviously, the elephant in the room with We Love Summer and the events is obviously coronavirus. COVID, it's still going on. We well into 2021, and this thing isn't going away. It hasn't gone away yet. Right. How are you guys thinking about dealing with the problem? How have you dealt with the problem over the year? Are you just riding out the waves, sort of? Are you innovating in some sort of way? How are you thinking about dealing with this, this overarching problem?
Yes, exactly. So first of all, I think that the interesting thing is that each of us sort of has, I would say about 2 or 3 years ago, each of us saw that, okay, the events are going well. And whereas at the beginning, it took 14 hours of work a day to try to figure out what to do and how to do it, we each felt and realized, okay, we have a couple of staff in place. Maybe it's more like a normal 8-hour day, 6 hours of work a day. So on event days, sure, it's like 24 hours of work, or leading up to it. But generally, at least for me, I found I like to work 12 to 14 hours a day, if not more. I actually love it. So I found, what's happening with my other few hours a day? And so we each found in our own ways other things that kept us busy and started businesses. Like for me, Empower Funding started about 3 years ago. So because of that, I think that we all were busy with other stuff. Had we not been, I'm sure we would have innovated and done some interesting things. But in saying that, it's also very challenging as a legitimate business to go and do that, because there are a lot of these parties that people are just kind of throwing, and they're figuring out ways to do parties and stuff like that. But the problem is it's not legal in reality. And because of that, because we're a legitimate business, it's not worth risking and doing all that right now.
Given the
So
current
it's tricky.
circumstances, you mean, with the restrictions?
Given specifically for the restrictions, it's not legal for us to do an event with over 100 people. And with us and our size, I mean, if we just say there's an event, 100 people come in a split, it's just not. And then to do it, it doesn't work for us. The restrictions are very tight, and I don't think that it's right to, under the current restrictions, to do it. I don't agree with the restrictions at all. I think that they're ridiculous. I think that the cure is much worse than the disease. I think that it's an overkill and has destroyed DJs and the small suppliers and anyone involved, freelancers, photographers, anyone, from the guys that do the lighting to the security to the toilets. I mean, there are so many important people that work at the events, from the most basic, the person that hangs the floating butterflies from the trees as decor, to the guy that helps clean up when the event is over. Everyone has been affected, and really affected. So I think that overall, I don't agree. I don't think that it's correct, these restrictions on events. I think that all over the world right now, there are ways of doing it. We've learned a lot about Corona. Florida, for example, has opened up again with their gatherings. So there's ways of doing it. And I think that the world needs to correct quickly, because it's hurting people in these in this industry and in many, many, many other industries. So without getting too political about it, I just want to say that is unfortunate. But in the circumstance, I do need to honor it. And that's why we can't right now do that much. But luckily, we always built it in a lean way. The business was quite lean. We didn't ever go too extravagant with spending and let's buy fancy offices and hire more people than we need. And we weren't like that. We were quite specific with our expenses. So it was also quite easy when we saw, okay, things are changing, to just flatline expenses and just weather the storm type thing.
And I mean, that's so important for a business like yours. I mean, you guys, it's amazing to see you guys have built slowly over 6-7 years, and built up such a rapport, such a brand loyalty with people who actually attend, myself being one. And you've been very pragmatic with the finances. I mean, I don't think I've asked you, but I mean, you don't have any external funding for the business. I mean, you've built slowly, and it's a really I mean, take my hat off to you. And I really admire that way of building a business. So it's really great. So obviously then you said Empower Funding came along 3 years ago. Now going from events to finance, that's almost like a 180, in the other direction. So how did that come about? What sort of sparked the idea in there? And can you explain what you guys do, and what Bridging Finance is?
For sure. So I say that it's kind of like a mullet, right? It's like business in the front, party in the back. Like that's like my profession.
I love that.
So the business part in the front is the finance business. And basically I'll tell you how it came about, but the idea of Bridging Finance is a property has been sold, right? And there's a 3-month waiting period in this country when no one gets paid out. The guy that sold his house doesn't get paid out. And the guy that was the agent, the guy or girl, or, in both circumstances, that was the agent, don't get paid out. They're waiting on their money for 3 months, and they need that money for cash flow, for money to run their business, their life, you name it. So we basically are a very niche type of finance, where we will give them, in that waiting period, short-term lending, so they get their money ahead of time. Our interest is the most affordable in the country in this industry. And that's what we do. It's property related, finance, very short term. That's the nutshell of Empower Funding. And should I talk about how it started, or
No,
what's
I mean,
interesting?
I just want to ask a question off the bat. Is this quite in like,
Yeah,
before you jump into the backstory of it, I mean, is this quite like an innovation and something that's not really been done? Because before I heard about your business, I'd never heard of something like this. And obviously it's a
right.
real problem with people having that 3-month wait period. So it's a brilliant solution to that problem. But I'm just wondering, I mean, do you
Yes.
have any like direct competitors? Is anyone else doing this, or?
Yes, so this is a business where it has been done. It's actually, we didn't invent this niche. It's been done. There's many other competitors that have been around for longer and are bigger than us, but you didn't know about it because honestly, they grew the old-fashioned way, in a way with like relationships and being big and being the first. And we kind of came in as like this young and spunky company that's very social media oriented, like young spunk in social media in a finance world.
Old school
And that's how you
finance?
kind
Yeah,
of,
I know what you mean.
yeah, exactly. So those guys never I mean, there was one that was around for 20 years, and literally I think 6 months after we were around, they opened an Instagram account. They saw what we were doing. So it was that type of situation. So yes, there are other people, there are competitors. The difference is our kind of approach, of course, in the market and all that, but also we have the best rate in the country. So we just came in undercutting in a big way on the interest rate. So it costs people less to work with us, basically.
Okay. And I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever read this book called The 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing. I don't know if it's quite an old book. It's like,
No.
there's a few like timeless laws of marketing. And maybe we can talk about that a bit, because I know a lot of your content is about marketing, and you
Yeah.
obviously very, it's a skill of yours, of obviously
Hmm.
from building We Love Summer and Empower. Um,
Yeah.
there's the first law of this in this book is the law of first, i.e., if you are first, or if you are the first company to start a business in a particular industry or niche, think of Coca-Cola, or whoever, um, even like, I don't know, Tesla, for example, or Amazon, who's the first in online e-commerce for selling books, right? um, that company usually wins it out. If you're first in an industry, you should usually have the biggest market share and win out in the end. So assuming that law is correct, I'm not saying that it holds true, because I definitely don't think it does
Hmm.
hold true in reality. Assuming that
Hmm.
law holds true, how do you think about sort of coming in as the new gun in an industry, in a quite an old school industry, besides the taking the social media approach, and or maybe just dig into how you're thinking about marketing your business and trying to steal market share from the old school?
Yeah, totally. So I think the first thing is that I don't think that law is true. Like you said, that you don't know if it's actually true, because think about it. There were many firsts that got destroyed by someone new, right? Kodak was the first, you could say, or at least the best, with in the photography world. And when the digital age came, they got destroyed by the new guys. Or there were others that sold books online or were doing e-commerce before Amazon, and Amazon came and destroyed them. So I think that theoretically you should have an advantage as a first, but I also think it can be a problem, because when you're first, you get complacent and nothing stays the same in the world, and they feel like, oh, we're at the top, and they stay the same. Nothing stays the same in this universe. It either goes up or down, but it does not stay the same. If it's the same, it means it's going down. Like this laptop I'm talking to you on, it looks like tomorrow it's the same as it was today and the same as yesterday. But unless I took care of it and cleaned it and cared for it, if it didn't go up, I guarantee you tomorrow it's gone down a little bit.
Yeah.
So that, I think the first sometimes can be big, but unless they remain with that knowledge that nothing stays the same, they will lose. And so it's just a matter of time, and how aggressive either they need to improve more or the new guy needs to improve more to beat them. So anyway, for me, we came in, I said, okay, great rate, 100%. But I also saw right away, I was like, I'm struggling to understand this industry, right? I felt like, hold on, I have questions. Now, as you know, as I said at the beginning, I didn't go to university to study finance, but I knew that I could learn it. But I figured it would be simple enough to learn to where I could get it. And I'm looking online and I'm like, wow, this is tougher than it should be. So I immediately said, we have to educate people about it. People have all these things that they don't understand in the industry. Even people that are real estate agents don't understand certain words that they read every single day. I put money on it that there are agents that just read the sale agreements that they write every day and they have no idea what the words mean. So I'm like, okay, we're going to do a whole thing where our social media is going to be adding value by clarifying words. I'll explain it as I learn it. I'll explain things to them that I'm learning that they probably don't know, and that'll add value to them. Or if they have a buyer or a seller that doesn't understand, they can refer them to our content. It's just great content off of a platform that does bridging finance. Whether they bridge with us or not, at least we put out value. So that was my
all for
first
free
approach.
as well. All for free as
All
well.
for free. Yeah, 100% for free. And then we also, so as I told you, I learned a lot from my dad.
Yeah.
And by the way, he's incredible. And I attribute a lot of my mindset, a lot of my approach to what he's taught me. And he has huge business success in his own right. And he teaches many, many people. So I've learned a lot from him. And maybe somehow I can try to one day get him on here. I can need to convince him to be on this podcast with
that
you.
would be, I'd love to have him. I'd love to have him on.
Yeah.
Maybe you can jump back on and we can have we can have all three of us on and going back in between. I feel like, I mean, I was just a quick tangent. I was at your Empower Funding seminar at the beginning of 2020, start 2020. Yes. Right. Actually, I have my notes from that seminar right here next to me. And it was the first
amazing.
time I'd ever been in front of your dad at a talk. And I mean, geez, he definitely came in from different angles that I hadn't thought about and blew my mind definitely in certain aspects. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, I can see that. And I can also see that he's definitely ingrained all these frameworks into how you think about things and how you apply them to business, which is amazing. I mean, I'd love to have him on if you would join.
We need to try to pin him down. We need to try to.
Yeah, I'm sure he's crazy busy.
But it'd be amazing to do, and that's the thing. So now, just as a by the way, because we're talking business and all that. So now, what happened is he started teaching people because people asked him how did he achieve his success.
Yeah.
And so he started teaching people, and he's so busy with clients now that there's a lot of new people that want to learn from him, but because he loves teaching such advanced material that is like really like mindset and spirituality and how spirituality connects to business and what to do in a business to make it a 7-figure bit. I mean, he teaches advanced stuff. So these new people were kind of like, where do we fit in? So now, by the way, as a side thing, which might be more because I really love doing it, I've started to help him with his newer students to give them the basic material, the stuff that I know like the back of my hand through, through learning from him, through experiencing it, through doing my own, getting my own results. So I've started doing that. And if they kind of eventually qualify, they start to learn with him. So that's sort of what we've also started to do as well. Great. I'm starting to get into the whole teaching and educating and doing seminars and webinars and giving out that value as well, aside from my businesses, but just I've been enjoying helping people with that stuff a lot.
And that does go hand in hand with the things you're doing in Empower Funding, because obviously you are, it seems like at the forefront, you are educating people about this industry actually. And that is sort of generating sales and leads for your business.
Totally.
So would you actually say that like your main strategy and the thing that you focus on mostly for Empower Funding is actually like content creation and marketing in that sense?
Yeah, in a big way. So the thing is this, so it's interesting. I think the reason we got onto my dad was because where I was sort of going with it was at the beginning, we said, okay, what can we do that's also going to be wow, right? More than just we do bridging. And that's when we started doing the seminars that my dad, which is the one that you said you just came to, you happened to say that you were at
Yes.
one. We started doing those, very high value. Usually to get him in a room costs a lot of money, but it was free to our clients or to people that we knew, like you, for example. And that made it like, wow, people got these like seminars that knew us or were on our mailing list. And that was one of the ways we grew. And of course, out of that came content, but that was one of our strategies of growing. And so when we started Empower, we didn't say, how can we sell more? That wasn't our question around the board meeting, it wasn't how do we sell more? It was our approach was, how do we help more? That was
Yes.
really our approach. We sat around the boarding, what's the word, boardroom
Yeah.
table, okay?
Yeah.
The boardroom table, and we really said, forget about selling for a sec. How do we help more? And that was, okay, we create content. One, okay, content that educates people, that answers questions, all that stuff. Two, we're going to do these seminars. These seminars are going to be super high value, but just put out like crazy content. So by helping others, whether they want to or not, but maybe they'll help us, they'll bring us some people. And then three was, okay, and then in reality, how do we create content for social media and all that? And I remember day one, no followers on Instagram, Twitter, nothing. And now we get leads off of there all day long. I mean, it's just and no one builds a finance business on social media. You get what I
Completely.
mean?
Completely.
So and
Completely.
that's sort of what we did.
Yeah, and
So
it
yeah.
reminds me of something I've been pondering this sort of quote. It's I don't know if you know the founder of Y Combinator, the startup incubator in the US.
Oh
What's his
wow,
name?
no.
I think it's his name's Paul Graham or so. Oh no, I could be wrong. But he basically
Okay.
has a saying that I've been pondering for most of this year. That's basically with regards to starting a business and starting a startup, doing things that don't scale. And this was really prevalent in how Airbnb started their business, back in 2009, 2010.
Yeah.
And this reminds me a lot of what you're doing things that don't scale. I mean, for your business, throwing the seminar, putting together the seminar with your dad, and I mean, how many people did we have in that room in January or December of 2019? It
Yeah.
was probably like
30.
what, 30
Yeah.
people, 20 to 30 people. I
Yeah.
mean, if I go out on a limb and say that that's probably not worth your time if you look at it economically right there, but
Yeah.
what that's doing for your brand value and creating these loyal customers and these fans that love you. I mean, there could be someone who maybe doesn't even need bridging finance that goes to a seminar and says, and they, turns around their business completely because of something that your dad says. And then it's associated with Empower funding because obviously you ran the seminar. So then they're like, oh my word, they basically like helped me turn around my business. And from
Yeah.
there, the circle of people who like love you, basically love your brand at least, just grows and grows and grows because of doing these things that on the surface don't seem like they scale your business, but they're
Yeah.
creating so much value, intangible value actually, which is amazing.
Exactly. That's literally, yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Because the thing is, it's just about helping people. Really, when you help, let's put it this way, when you sell, if you're a real salesperson, just helps the prospect. They're not, they need to help the prospect to help themselves with your product or service. If I'm selling cars, I'm not selling cars, I'm helping you purchase a vehicle. It's different to let me sell you. It's just helping. So if you want to sell more, you can also just help more. And you think, yes, but if I help, where's the money in it? Help doesn't mean without return. But when you help, there will be the return.
And it's also
Help
helping without an expectation.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, the idea is really, so I think it's interesting if we're talking about the subject of help. I think that there's a false idea that help means with no return. Okay. Because people think I should help, I shouldn't get anything back. And the problem with that is back to the idea of exchange. If I give you something, there has to be exchange. The worst kids in the world are the kids that are of millionaire parents or billionaire parents, because they got so much help and they couldn't give anything in return to the parents. They were overwhelmed. If you'll think back to any friend you had a big upset with, you helped them so much and they didn't help you in return, or they helped you so much and you didn't do something in return for them. That balance is a life balance that you can't avoid. It sounds very romantic. I'm going to help you and not get anything back. But what you're actually doing is destroying the person. People like it's natural to have that give and take. So when you help, it doesn't mean right away. It doesn't mean with money, but there has to be some kind of a return, because that's the way it goes in life. So when you help, it's not that you're doing it because you expect something. No, I'm helping you genuinely. It has to be genuinely to help you. Full stop. Naturally, though, there will be a beautiful return, and that will be healthy, and the relationship will grow, and then you will give me something, and then I will give you something, and it's naturally a growth upward. So that's the angle on help.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
No, completely.
That's the approach. It's a subtle, it's a nuance almost, but that's the difference.
And talking about helping, and you mentioned a relationship there, and I think we can maybe move into it makes me think about your podcast that you started with your lovely wife Mariah.
Yes.
The adventure continues.
Yes.
It's a also, what I find so interesting about you is that you're an entrepreneur. You've got all these businesses going on in the background, but then you started this amazing podcast with your wife that's doing insanely well about like relationships and stuff. And you guys talk about really like real stuff. There's no sugarcoating. I mean, I binged the podcast in anticipation for my chat with you tonight, and I stopped somewhere around the episode about the Mile High Club. That was a really good one.
Yeah, that was fun.
You guys aren't leaving anything, anything to the imagination there, which, I find, and I mean that it seems like it's helping so many people. I've been following along the journey from when you guys started. You guys have been getting amazing feedback from people. I mean, you had that one episode where people actually sent in questions, and you did a whole episode based on that. What's that experience been like? And has that podcast sort of come from that passion for that you've sort of developed now later in life for helping people, for teaching, or was it more just like something you wanted to start with Mariah?
This is one of those that developed very naturally, but yes, from the passion of just wanting to help. And it was even before I started to get into, like I told you, that I'm going to be doing the webinars and the seminars and helping people and coaching them. Even before I decided to do that, which I'm doing that as well to help. But that's just what happened. Was I had different friends start to ask me questions that were also pretty personal. I was surprised they'd send me these voice notes about, and different people, like out of the blue, people from high school, even that I wasn't that close with, randomly, oh, I see your relationship with Mariah. I have a question about this. Or another guy asked me, this and this about sex, or just different things. And I'm like, okay, they're asking, like, okay. So I would send them voice notes back. Like, I can talk about anything. I have no issue to talk about anything. So, okay, I would voice note them back and answer their questions. And I'm like kicking myself because we started it quite late in 2020, where I'm like, if we would have started this early in lockdown when everyone was at home, this would have been even bigger.
Crazy.
But it wasn't something, but the thing is, it wasn't something that we started like, we should do this. Otherwise, if it was like, we should do this, we would have just started during lockdown. It would have been the perfect time. But it happened later in 2020, just because people started asking. And I actually was, funny enough, again, back to my dad, I was helping him set up a podcast, and I was like helping him do it. And then I was like, this is, I get it. I get how this works. And then I had the idea of like, all these people are asking me questions. Babe, why don't we do a little podcast where we just talk about these things? So we started talking about some of the first questions we got. And then we just came up with like topic after topic. We have notes in our phone of like endless ideas to talk about. And we started talking about, like the Mile High Club episode where we were like, let's go there. Let's like, why not? Let's just go there. Like it's fun. It's because it's part of a relationship. Nobody wants to talk about these things, but it's the way that's part of relationships. So we said, okay, how do we make this all the ships, relationships, friendships, partnerships, any type of relationship? And that's what how the podcast was born. It was just kind of naturally, and we just were consistent and started to grow it, and it was fun.
And I mean, what's been the most rewarding experience from starting the podcast? And have you found any challenges? And I mean, what would you say to someone else trying to start a podcast? 3 quick tips that could set them off tomorrow to start their own podcast.
For sure. So challenges would be, first of all, now we're seeing is being consistent in a busy lifestyle. You got to be disciplined about being consistent, which really helps with getting listenership, is being consistent. That's been a bit of a challenge where we were really good at the beginning, and we will be good about it again. But we've noticed like, sometimes that's a challenge. Rewarding is we get some amazing feedback. Some we post on social media and some remains private, but just people are like, listen, like you have no idea that like how much this brightens up my day in the mornings. Like I look forward to your podcast, and it really gave me insight on what to do with my boyfriend, or different things like that. That's like, honestly, if this one review is all we ever got, like it was worth it. Like those types of things that are actually like, I feel like I'm helping someone in a way and brightening up their day to some degree. And let's see, 3 tips. Number 1, it's not nearly as hard as you think. In fact, before the podcast that we started, now you and I talking, you mentioned you saw my wife Mariah made a video on her YouTube how we started a podcast. So you can look her up, Mariah Ezra on YouTube, and she has this video on how we started. She shows roughly kind of how to start, but in reality, it's actually simpler than you think.
It's literally just talking to people.
Yeah, it's talking to people, and the software isn't challenging. You can find a software, like we use one called Anchor. Anchor, you literally put it up, you upload it, and then it goes onto every platform. It's like it couldn't be more simple. I thought it was super complicated. So number 1, super simple to start. And maybe I would say number 2, it's just talking to people. It can be about anything. You don't need to think that it needs to be anything too fancy. It could be something about relationships. It could be about your love of a particular video game, or there are podcasts that have done so well that just talk about like a review of Game of Thrones episodes. Like there are podcasts for everything. And number 3, you don't need any fancy equipment. If you have it, it's better over time. But I can tell you that if you have a phone and you can find a quiet space to record in, it's all you need to start. Now, of course, the big podcasts have better equipment, but you don't need it to start. We have a very simple mic that we plug into our phone. We go into this quiet room, and that's how we record. Now that we've grown a little bit, I want to get, like, you have a great setup. I need that in my life now. Like eventually you can improve your quality, but in our 3 points to start, you don't need something fancy to start. Just start with a phone. I mean, get it going, put it up, get used to talking a little bit, and you'll have a podcast on your hands.
I completely agree with that. And just to echo some of those thoughts, from my own experiences, when Jonty and I started Mindshift, I was like sitting in the dark on the video, like you couldn't see me. We were talking in, I don't know, we were just started recording on our phones, and the quality was terrible, and things progress. But you just got to give it a try. Start it, no matter how bad the quality is. And like you guys mentioned as well in your podcast, you got to get to that number 7. If you get to that episode number 7, and you're loving it, and then continue by all means. But if you get to number 6, 7, not really feeling it, then put it away. You know what I mean? And it's something you tried. You probably learned to, the amount of skills you learn from doing this, just being able to talk to people, guide a conversation, think on your feet, it's invaluable. I found it invaluable for myself, doing something like this.
Yeah, but I want to say though, you're great, by the way, at hosting.
Thanks.
I must say, yeah, really good. Like you have a good flow, good answering asking questions, hearing the answers, giving your input, like letting me and the other guests speak. Like you're very, very good.
Thanks, Carl.
So,
I really appreciate that.
Yeah, but I did want to say really quick before we continue.
Yeah.
That idea of the quantity, just putting things out there before the quality, is also a big philosophy of mine with everything I do. Put out the quantity, just put it out. Don't worry. People get hung up on quality, so they don't start the podcast because they don't have the right equipment, or they don't put out the piece of marketing content because it's not exactly good quality. Put it out, start the business, sell something, even if it's not the best quality yet, it will improve, but just start. So important.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. And I had a similar experiences when I was starting a business in university. Obviously, the jewelry business we were starting, and we always used to get hung up on getting the perfect Instagram post, the perfect caption. And you look back and it's like, it just slows you down. Like you say, speed is power. You say it as well. And having speed to just put it out, get feedback, innovate, iterate, and work from there. And that's how you start your business. You have to start from somewhere. It's such an important thing. And Gal, as we do near the end of this amazing conversation, I've enjoyed it so much with you.
Me too.
I do want to ask a couple of quick fire / shorter questions just to squeeze out that extra bit of value juice.
Sure.
First question, how important has Mariah been, without going into too much detail about your relationship, how important has she been in your life, in your journey of starting your businesses? How important has she been as a support structure, helping you? Do you bounce ideas off her?
Yes, absolutely. Very important. Her qualities fill in gaps that I don't have in certain areas, and I learn from her, and then she learns from me, and then because she improves, I improve, and we both have this thing of improving. I definitely bounce ideas off of her. She's super supportive, and like having that unit, that relationship together makes me stronger, her stronger, and together, I think that's the purpose of a relationship, is to maximize the potential of the other individual. And she does that beautifully. So very important.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And what's the story, or the sort of tradition, the story behind what you always used to do? Well, I'm sure you will do in the future when you can do it at Kinky Summer. You spray a bottle of champagne like clockwork at midnight every single New Year's. What's the story behind that, and why do you do it?
It started, I want to say, actually the first time that I think it was probably the first year that Mariah and I celebrated New Year's Eve together for the first time when we just started dating. On New Year's Eve was the first night we said I love you. And I think that was the first time we did the champagne spray. And I just remember us kissing, New Year's Eve kiss. We popped champagne. A friend of mine poured it over Mariah and I's heads as we were kissing. It was like this beautiful moment. And it was just became this thing of like, we spray champagne. And I think it started just, if it was the year before that, which I'm trying to remember the origin. It started as just like a fun thing to do. Like you feel like amazing, just like it's a celebration thing. And it became this tradition of like, no, like every year you got to do it, just for the sense of celebration. Another year, it's like this stable thing that we love doing. And you spray champagne, it just lasts for a few seconds, but it's this moment of like, it's just means victory. It means another year. It means excitement. It means celebration. And I'm all about, as I said earlier, celebrating the improvements, every little one. So it means just celebrate this moment.
Yeah. Even if that's a year like 2020, I'm sure you still there's still nuggets of good that happened in the year.
Yeah.
And second last question for you of this
Sure.
interview. What's the best investment, financially or not, that you've made in the past 5 years?
So the best investment has been, and I think it's cliche, but in myself. I think that it's so important, especially early in life. I mean, you need to continue throughout life, but especially when you're learning and building, and at the beginning, you invest in yourself, meaning learn, meaning, yeah, spend the time, invest the time, and in the right places. The problem these days is that there's so much information that it starts to conflict, and it all sounds really sexy, but when you actually, most people, because it sounds so sexy, they take it on, but it's actually false information, and you get poisoned by too much data that's available. There's so much information, it all sounds good. One guy says you should have debt, the other guy says never have debt, and you're like, they both sound really good, which do I, and you get crippled. That's the only negative. So for me, it's been investing my time and money in self improvement and studying and learning about mindset, about business, about spirituality, and about how to do things better in the right places. It's very important that you do the right places. And if anybody wants to know what I study or anything like that, they can always message me and talk to me about it. I'll tell you kind of where I get my information from. Hint, a big one is my dad, and he does a lot of teaching about that kind of stuff. So that's for sure what I would recommend.
And I mean, talking about that, it's actually a great quick segue into just like any book recommendations you have, or that that you have learned from hugely influential books that you've had, or great sites, articles that you've I don't know, newsletters that you recommend that are just the go-tos.
So basically, books and newsletters that I've read. A lot of books I read in high school, actually. So that's for sure been a big part of it for me. I read books like Atlas Shrugged and certain books that by Ayn Rand that really were like game changers for me in terms of understanding, just like, I want to say, politics and mentality and what can happen in the world. If anything, if you've read Ayn Rand, you'll know that if you understand her concepts, you learn a lot. So that's one thing. But if not her, what I study today is just a lot of audiobooks, and I'll listen to anyone from Richard Branson to Elon Musk's book, all the the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. But when I listen to these books, even by these big people, I find what I think is true and what I think is not true. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People has a lot of truth, but it also has things that you need to know. I don't know if that's right, but because it's in the book, everyone thinks it's true. So whatever you study, you need to dissect for what is. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, and that's so valuable, because I think also everything, like you say, the modern day media, we have to approach everything we read nowadays with some sort of skepticism, and obviously, you have to understand that these books are written by humans, and this is something I've been working on a lot, is these books are written by humans who have their own subjective and biased lives and experiences and stuff. So they're writing this book predicated on their own biased subjective experiences that might not necessarily apply to you. So you have to test that in your reality as well. That's what I mean. That's what I found, especially with books, and that's made my reading more enriching, because I'm actually reading more with like an inquisitive mind, and not just reading something and be like, oh, okay, that's how the world works, not necessarily.
Yeah, exactly. If you apply something and it doesn't immediately get you results, like the right results that you expected to get, you need to immediately say it's not a good piece of data. Doesn't matter who said it. If it doesn't add up for you, if it's not true for you and it doesn't bring you results, doesn't matter where it came from, don't use it. And you can usually detect immediately, that didn't get me the right result, but then people keep using it because they think it must be true because someone said it. If it didn't bring you results, or it doesn't add up for you, or it's not true for you, reject it. Like, don't worry about rejecting it. Doesn't matter who the source is.
And that's great stuff. And final question for you.
Yes.
If you were to have a billboard that, the whole of South Africa or the entire world would see, and you had one message to put on that billboard, what would you say to people?
Oh, that's a good one. You don't fix people by showing them what's wrong with them. You fix people by showing them what's right with them. So people have this whole idea of, I'm going to fix my employee, I'm going to fix my girlfriend, I'm going to fix my friend even by showing them what's wrong with them. This is wrong, you did this wrong, all these things wrong. That's not how you fix people or help people. You do it actually by showing them what is right. If you can show them the right that they do, they will by themselves fix what's wrong. And what's interesting, you'll find that when you find what's right with people, you also change when you show people what's right. So that's a big billboard, but the main message on that billboard is find what's right with people, not what's wrong with people.
Amazing. Girl, thanks so much for doing this. And just quickly before you sign off, where can people find you? Where, to consume your content? Where's the main place people should go to check you out?
Yeah. So these days you have been doing a lot of stuff on TikTok actually, but also Instagram, Gal A Ezra, GALAEZ or ZRA. Those are the main two places, and pretty much across the board it's Gal A Ezra. But of course you can look me up on YouTube, Gal Ezra, etc. And I always reply to comments. I always answer DMs. If anybody had, they want to learn about where I learned from, or they want to ask me another question or whatever, feel free to write to me. I will always respond to you.
And I can vouch that his TikTok's really good. I have
Thank you.
done a bit of doom scrolling down there just to check it out. It's great. It's some great stuff.
So
it's some great stuff you're putting out across all your platforms, and you've built some great businesses. I mean, I've had some of the best parties of my life at your event. So thanks for that. And I'm excited to see what the next few years of learning. Your motto, your podcast, your other podcast that we didn't actually talk about is called As I Learn, and that's a big motto of yours, and I can't wait to see what you learn and continue learning from you. So thanks so much for doing this, man.
My pleasure. You're amazing at what you do, and I want to do like an interview of you, but really thank you for reaching out to me and for doing this.
Hey everyone, before you go, I just wanted to jump in here and say on behalf of Jonty and myself, thank you so much for watching that episode. We really, really appreciate it. If you enjoyed that episode of Mindshift, check out some of our others. They should be around here somewhere on the screen. Also, subscribe to the channel and give this video a like for the YouTube algorithm. Till the next Mindshift, bye for now.